We are live.
Living live.
So it says already that we're live, because on my side it says we're preparing. Okay, well then I'm not going to wait until it says that we're preparing, because last time I looked like a fool. Hi everyone, this is Traci Ruble. I'm the director of Psyched in San Francisco, and we haven't been with you for a little bit, but we're back tonight. I'm going to put us in the three view mode. Can you hear a double?
Sounds fine on my end.
Okay,
Sounds
I
fine.
think it's because I can hear the other.
Echoes.
Uh,
I'm Robert Solley.
Hold on, guys.
Oh, I was just going to fill in this space.
Yeah, so let me tell you what's going on. I can hear myself from 10 seconds ago. So I'm sitting here listening to all of this. I'm just going to turn off
You could have a
Facebook.
conversation with yourself.
There. So now I'm good. So this is Traci Ruble. I'm a couples therapist. I work in downtown San Francisco. I'm the director of Psyched in San Francisco. Robert, Andrew, and I, this is actually really fun for us. We've been doing this for about a year. We've skipped a couple sessions, but we get together, we take your questions live, and we answer them on Facebook Live. We'll take this video and stick it up on YouTube so you can watch it afterwards. And we're super excited tonight because we have 3 really juicy questions. I might be a little more quiet tonight because I'm getting over something, so I'll orchestrate the questions, but I'll lean in as I have the energy too. Andrew, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Andrew Groeschel, and I've been with Psyched in San Francisco since its inception. I'm a teletherapist, 5 years. And as I've mentioned previously, if you've tuned into any of our webinars, I'm licensed in California, Texas, and the great state of Washington, where I am in private practice and also do teletherapy in Texas and California.
Thanks, Andrew. Robert?
Very good. Well, I'm only licensed in one state, so I'm feeling inadequate right now, but California, and I have a private practice in San Francisco, mostly seeing couples and adult individuals. And I'm actually interested in seeing more individuals that are working with couples therapists. So I'm going to sort of develop that as a new strain. So,
oh, interesting. Cool.
That's me for now.
You also do some lecturing in couples therapy, and you're the clinical director at Psyched.
Okay.
Right. Oh, okay. So humble. So Robert also hosts our monthly clinical calls when people show up for them, right, Robert?
Right. And I teach at USF master's level graduate students.
There you go.
Right.
So we see a lot of couples and we enjoy it. And I think we have fun on these calls because we all get to share really our different ways of working, but we all get to vibe and learn from each other. So it's fun. And you as the viewer get to kind of watch the dynamic process that is couples therapy. So we dig that too. So guys, I'm going to read the first question that we got from one of our viewers, and we were just talking about it, and nowhere in here could we tell what the gender of this person was. So we're going to assume, we're not going to make any assumptions it's a male or a female in this first question. It says, I've been with my partner for 3 years, and he tends to be emotionally distant. When I ask to meet his family, he makes excuses. When I invite him to meet my family, he always has things to do. We are intimate only once a month, but sometimes we go 3 to 4 months with no physical or sexual contact. When I confront him on this, he begins accusing me of cheating or blaming me for why he doesn't come around. I'm ready to leave the relationship. When I leave, he pulls me back in. Am I crazy for staying, or should I let it go? Am I being abused? Do you think he's cheating on me? So many questions, and I just don't know what to do. I guess I'm wondering, how can I leave this relationship and be sure not to take the trauma from this into a new relationship? Okay, so there's 2 questions here about whether to stay or go, and then how to get over it in a way that you're not feeling harmed in the next relationship. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thoughts? Who wants to start? Andrew, want to say something about this one?
Sure. Well, again, like it's important to say, and I think we say it every time when we start one of these, to kind of honor the courage it takes for people to come forward and be vulnerable and ask these kind of questions of of us. So I really admire that and appreciate you taking that risk. I guess the first question, again, we only have what you give us in these little vignettes, which is a little different than our work on a daily basis when we're seeing
so many questions.
And I'm sorry, I just got some audio there. Is that?
I think it's over.
It's over. So yeah, we have what you give us. So a kind of question that immediately comes to mind is, I mean, there sounds like there's a lot of stuff going on here, but I would ask this person, what are the pros and cons of staying in this relationship? You've been in it for 3 years, so there's something that draws you to this person, but kind of what might that exploration be like for you? Having an honest discussion with yourself, a counselor, going into counseling yourself, and really exploring that. What is it about you, or what's going on in your life that has kept you in this relationship? And kind of exploring those things would be top of mind for me.
Yeah, I like that.
You know?
So I have, you have a lot of questions. I have some questions too. I'm talking to the person who wrote the questions.
Yep.
And these are a lot of questions, so there's a lot to ponder here. Starting with, I'm wondering how much you know about what goes on with your partner. It sounds like there's a lot of things that are kind of mysterious to you, like why he doesn't want to, meet your family, why you haven't met his family, which is actually, that's fairly shocking, I would say, if you haven't even met them. I'm not sure if you meant that literally after being together 3 years. Is that 3 years? Yeah. So that's a little worrisome, I must say. I think that's like the most worrisome thing in your set of questions and comments, that if you actually have not met his family at all, that's odd. However, with the other ones, there's a lot more ambiguity. For example, if he makes excuses for not meeting your family, I'd be curious what that reluctance is about, whether you know anything about that. And if not, it might be good to explore that and find out what the meaning of that is for him. It sounds like there are a lot of things that are sort of unclear between you. There may be more, that you're not telling us for the sake of space, but that would be a starting point. And I understand if he's a person who tends to be, as you say, emotionally distant, it may be hard to get information from him, but that sort of makes it all the more important that you approach it in a kind of a calm and curious fashion rather than a kind of accusatory fashion. You mentioned being confrontive about some of these things, and that will tend to make someone else defensive. So you might want to if you want to reapproach some of these questions, you might want to say, in the past I may have been kind of accusatory or confrontive, and I'd really like to start over in a calm way and try to understand some things about each other. And then you could ask about what that reluctance is about in terms of your family. You could ask what his hesitation is about your meeting his family, and those kinds of things.
To interject along the same lines, Robert, that's a great point. It's kind of, again, reflecting yourself. Kind of what are your longings in the relationship? What are your expectations? And be confident in that. Like you talk about the intimate sexual contact only every 3 or 4 months. What would be, for some couples that works perfectly fine. For other couples that doesn't. So asking yourself, what are your hopes in that regard? But then also, rather than to Robert's point, rather than being attacking or accusatory, ask him honestly, what are his expectations? What are his hopes? And then you gain more information around whether or not you think this is a fit. this is something that's workable, and or are those differences irreconcilable, and then you decide whether you part ways or not. But you have more information, and you've at least made that effort to kind of find out from him or from that person. Sorry.
So bottom line, whether you're a man or a woman, I think that feeling empowered, like Andrew said, to really be clean and clear about what you're wanting from a relationship. I think you're doing a lot of emotional labor here, trying to figure out where your partner stands and what's going on. And I would suggest that you don't need to do that much work, right? I think the work is to really be clear with yourself. Here's what I want my relationship to look like, right? Here's how much sex I want to be having. Here's how I want to commingle our families. Here's how much time I want to be spending together. Here's how I want to work towards a communication with you. And after 3 to 4 years, if those things aren't happening, then it's for you to then decide if this is a relationship for you to be in, right? And 3 to 4 years is a long time, right, to sort of figure out. And so I want you to ultimately take it into your own hands and feel empowered rather than feeling abused or like you're the victim. But you actually have a choice here. And so I think the invitation here for you is to really get clear with yourself on what kind of relationship you ultimately want. And if this one isn't it, you know, the next step is to be very direct and say, hey, this is the kind of relationship that I want. This is, and spell it out. Do you think that's possible between the two of us? And if your partner says no, then you have to move on, right? And be really direct. Pulling back in, yeah, we have lust for each other. We miss each other. So you guys will both have to have some stamina to sort of resist that or renegotiate the terms of your relationship, because maybe you decide, well, we do just want to have a sexual relationship where we have sex every 3 months because it's fun and convenient. Well, that's okay too, but then it's just a resetting of expectations. So that would be my 2 cents here. I think you've got a lot of opportunity to empower yourself. It's just getting really clear about what you want and then finding out if it's possible in this relationship.
Yeah. And I would just add, Traci, I think those are great suggestions, especially about figuring out what he or she wants and using that as a starting point. There's a risk of sort of figuring that out and then making it a demand, like I need this or else, you know. And I would suggest, you know, using that as a starting point for a conversation, as you said, to figure out what's possible rather than, you know, sort of making it. Because, you know, I think this person may feel impatient. They've been trying to, you know, figure these things out for a long time. And that's, you know, it's natural and it's natural. That's sort of where the accusing and confronting can come from, is that kind of frustration and impatience. But be careful about not letting that turn into a kind of demand or, you know, create problems and being able to have a conversation about it.
Yeah. Using that, I think, as a stepping stone to be curious about what his responses may be to those same questions and those same longings or needs or wants in the relationship. And then,
because to Robert's point, it, you know, this tendency, if we do confront with our needs rather than create space with our needs, that does invite our partner to be more secretive with us because they feel like there's not enough space. So then that almost promotes the kind of behavior that says, hey, I don't want to bring you around my family. So I'm not suggesting that's what's going on here, but I think Robert brings up a really good point, sort of correcting the way I'd said what I'd said about needs, to express the needs in the form of an invitation or a conversation so that it creates more space for more dialogue. And I think that's right. Hard to do. That's why most people come to couples therapy. Because by this point, we're so frustrated that, you know, we just have steam coming out our ears. So I want to normalize that it's hard to do. It's hard to like have a conversation about your needs and not be kind of pissed off, you know, but ultimately it is how you're going to have to lean into this one, because otherwise your partner's just going to shut you down and get defensive. Right.
Yeah. And I just wanted to kind of address quickly the question of abuse and the question about cheating. I think those are too complicated for us to really address here. I mean, for me, abuse is a kind of a spectrum, and it's kind of, it's hard to really answer that question. You guys may have other answers, but that would be my answer. Yeah. And then in terms of the one about taking your trauma into the next relationship, if that's what happens, my answer to that would be to get therapy for yourself. And I think that could be helpful whether you decide to leave or not, either way.
Yeah, I think we take whatever we got from our previous relationship into our next relationship always, regardless. And I think that's impossible for it not to be so. And I also don't think it has to be the trauma. I think it can be all the lessons and growth, right? So everything that you've learned about expressing yourself, about creating open space for dialogue, about being clear about your needs, about how you exited cleanly with respect, all those things actually you can look at as something you take into the next relationship. I don't think it's just the trauma. I mean, endings are painful, right? Because we didn't get this one will be really painful, it sounds like, because you're not getting what you want. But I don't think endings have to automatically mean trauma either.
I think that's a key point, Traci. This can be no matter what direction it goes in, it can be an opportunity for growth, right? For the both partners. Mm-hmm. And exactly, it doesn't have to be trauma, but an opportunity to grow into the next relationship, to feel more confident in what you're looking for, what you're hoping for, but then also to aspire to not tear down the other person and honor those differences and part amicably.
Cool.
Right.
I was just looking to see if we had any other questions on Facebook Live, but I don't see any. So shall we move on to the next question?
Sure.
So thank you for your question. And then we're going to move on to question number 2. We agreed that this looked like this was a woman. I'm a passive feminist who found myself in love with a high profile top tech sales performer. He proposed over the holiday, and of course I accepted. My partner thinks once we get married, he can control all the finances in the household. In all caps, that's not happening. I refuse. How can I have a safe conversation about gender roles and money as we prepare for our future together?
Well, I would say right off the bat, this is an opportune time to enter into some premarital counseling to kind of work out all of these different expectations of what it means to be a husband, what it means to be a wife for each one of you, and a spouse, a partner, and explore those things, because it sounds like this may not just be about money. I can imagine there's other things.
Like what, Andrew?
I don't know. I mean, ways of being in the world. How to run the household. What she says, gender roles. I mean, there's all kinds of things that fall under that. Again, kind of as we ended the last vignette there is the same thing. This is rather than something to be dreaded, this is an opportunity. Do this, get on this now. So, what's the stat you guys probably know as well as I, but what does Gottman say? It's like typically the average for couples getting into couples therapy is 6 years into their relationship, I believe it is.
Right.
Is that right?
6 years after problems start.
Or 6 years after problems start. But the point there is that we wait too long.
Right.
Do it now. And again, and it can be an opportunity, an exploration, something that can be fun. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom, and it's not that you're deficient in any way entering into that process, but it's an opportunity to learn, because marriage is an ongoing learning process.
That's right.
Right.
We speak from experience.
We speak from experience.
We're all married.
Personal experience.
We've all been married a long time too.
Right. And we all continue to learn.
And we've all been in couples therapy, right?
Right.
Yep.
For a long time.
Yeah. See, so we understand it from both sides. So I want to say, I'm going to let Robert answer, but I'm going to say this one piece. Couples therapy is not something that's just about fixing what's broken. It's actually about creating foundations to create a lot of strength. And so I actually fundamentally believe, aside from all the other kinds of therapy that there are out there, I feel like every couple should be in couples therapy. I think every couple should have a couples therapist in their back pocket, because modern relationships have evolved so quickly. And we expect so much out of marriages now. I mean, we make it almost impossible. And so you're really normal for having this question. That's what I want to say. Super normal. Super normal.
And it's great you're wanting to address it now.
And on that note, I just want to acknowledge too that the husband clearly has some strengths, right? He's a high performer in work. He may be a kind of achiever personality, and rather than setting that up in opposition to yourself, how can again you have a conversation about his strengths and your strengths and how those strengths are different from one another, and how they complement each other, so that you can begin to kind of loosen the fixed position that we have here. That sounds like he's really fixed in this notion that he's going to control or manage the finances, and you're saying that's not happening, in quotes. I was going to use some more colorful language there. Kind of approaching it from a strengths-based perspective, I think is again another opportunity that you guys both bring unique qualities to the table, and how can they dance together those skills you bring.
Traci, you were asking Andrew what other things might be reflected, or what other things, other areas of conflict that might be related. I would broaden this to say that it's a concern, probably. I mean, you, the questioner, might pose it differently, but I would put it in terms of a concern about equality in the relationship, which is, what feminism is about, I think, if I can say that. About equality, balance, wanting to feel, like you share in things together, and you make decisions together, and, share in financial concerns as well as other concerns. So, there may be other areas where you want to feel equal as well, but this is the one that's standing out for you at the moment. And I think that would be a good way to frame it to your partner also. That this is really what you're wanting, is to feel equal together, to have a sense of mutuality, which is a term that we use a lot in couples therapy, a sense that, you're a team together rather than one person calling the shots and the other person having to just go along with it. So, that's kind of how I would think about it. And as we're saying, that same sense may apply to other things, but this is the one that's standing out for you right now. And to try to not approach it as much, Andrew referred to this idea of kind of being in these fixed positions. You appear to be in a kind of a standoff now, where you're each, and I don't know what your partner is really saying about wanting to control the money, but it sounds like, it's that kind of yes, no thing where one person is saying, I want to do it this way, and the other is saying, no, I'm not going to do it that way. And that's, kind of what we describe as a power struggle. You want to try to kind of soften that by thinking about it in terms of equality and balance, and by really understanding what these things mean to each other. What does it mean to you to be able to make financial decisions together, or to be able to make money together? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to him to want to be more in financial control, how does that relate to his family? How does it relate to your family in the ways that your parents thought about money and the ways that your family values around money? So, there's a lot in there to find out about each other.
And I want to be a little meta for a second and take it in a slightly different direction. And I could be reading into the question a little bit. But what I do find interesting is that you said that you just got engaged, okay? And then you went right into this, and then he's going to control the finances. And so I'm just tracking the way in which there's this strong, abrupt, there's this opening to coming together and being engaged. And then there's this strong, abrupt need to grab hold of or push back. So I'm thinking of attachment, I'm thinking of systems. So here, the engagement brings you really close together. And then this frustration with the money kind of creates more distance. And so I'm wondering if there isn't some dancing going along here too, more of a process issue rather than a content issue, where this conversation about money is a way that you're also negotiating space, right? In terms of our own attachment material, if marriage itself is the ultimate attachment commitment, right? We're getting ready to jump in with this person over the long term. And so unconsciously, we may be creating some really interesting ways to create a little distance around this big commitment that we just made. So I would invite this for you that's asking this question. I would invite yourself to think a little bit about what your feelings are about getting married. Not to scare you or think that you shouldn't be, but to get in touch with this part of you that might be nervous, that might be feeling a little suffocated, that these kind of secret feelings that you might be tucking away, give them a little space and kindness and curiosity, and just wonder about them too. I think everything Andrew and Robert said have to and must be talked about, and they are wonderful opportunities, and you're so normal to need to be talking about how you're going to negotiate power and money in your relationship and equality. But I also would invite you to look at your own relationship with closeness and distance and marriage in general. What's the other thing that was coming to mind for me?
Yeah, that's great, Tracy. I love that. And it's funny because I just had a couple an hour ago that was in the same kind of dance where it was a minute before midnight on New Year's. And they were together at a party, and let's see, I have to be careful about whether this is, confidential. I'll put it really generally that she posed a question to him a minute before midnight, before the new year, and they've just known each other a year. She posed a question that evoked a feeling of rejection in him. And then he got angry at her and she got angry at him, and they had this blow up, where at this moment that they really wish they would have been together,
Mm-hmm.
So it's that same thing of here's the possibility. In this case, it's an actual opening and coming together, but then there's that fear, and we all have that ambivalence, This is a wonderful thing, but it's also a scary thing, And so I think that's very nice how you put that.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I think that you're hearing from Andrew and Robert and I that we're all thinking that this would be, you're going to save yourself a ton of time and a ton of money if you go see a premarital therapist now. Because if you go in 6 years, when Gottman says most couples go, you've kind of, done damage to the relationship that you didn't need to do. Whereas right now, if you talk to someone, it can be really exciting and foundation building and fun. It's fun at the early stages. It's super fun. You go now when it's super fun.
Yeah,
so
you can learn about each other.
Yeah, it'll make your wedding really fun. I love doing premarital work, and I've written wedding vows with couples before. And that's so touching and fun to do. Shall we go on to question 3?
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. Says, it looks like this one's a woman. My husband and I have been married for 15 years. He's a gambler and alcoholic, but refuses to acknowledge the problem. I've been in my own therapy for 3 months because I'm ready to file for divorce. However, my therapist recommended we go to couples counseling first, which makes absolutely no sense to me. I asked him to come, but he is refusing. Is there anything I can do to get him to come to therapy with me, or should I just leave him? No pressure on that question. 15-year relationship. I'm wondering if they had kids. It didn't say anything about kids. 15 years, though, I wonder. Any thoughts, guys?
I mean, that's my first kind of question is does she want to give this a go? Again, maybe I'm presumptuous on the gender, but does the partner want to give this relationship try a reset, or are they out the door with that final question? Should I just leave? But again, from my kind of strengths-based and resilience orientation, my first curiosity is 15 years. What have you guys done this long to get through? What has worked? And then also, what has there been a discussion of kind of the pros and cons of gambling and alcohol in the husband's life? How might he respond to that kind of opening, that kind of discussion, rather than a kind of, a judging, wagging the finger, drinking and gambling are wrong? How has it served him, so that we can begin to get a sense of what is motivation for continuing to gamble and continuing sounds like problem drinking. How has that served him, and what is motivating him to continue to do that? And are the cons, the possibility of losing his partner, worth continuing that? Again, we only get what they tell us, but it sounds like that's a discussion that might need to happen, and maybe that's why the individual therapist is suggesting couples therapy to explore some of those questions. That's my initial.
I'm gonna take a little bit harder line here.
Yeah.
Assuming that there's enough evidence, and that, this is an assumption, but assuming there's enough evidence to say that these are addictions, that it's the alcohol problem is an addiction, and that the gambling is an addiction, and that they're having a significant effect on the relationship. In some significant brands of therapy, couples therapy, addiction is considered a rule out for therapy, meaning that you can't really do couples therapy if there's that much lack of safety, that one or both partners have addictions that are creating enough, lack of safety in the relationship that it's impossible to kind of do the emotional work. So I'm, making that assumption, I would say, that I would, I am actually not a fan of ultimatums in general, but I think in the case of an addiction or a severe mental health issue, it is important for that person to get treatment. So the problem here is that often people in this situation make a lot of threats about leaving the relationship, but they don't do it, and so it becomes a false threat. So if that's the case, what I would suggest is that you sort of acknowledge that you've made a lot of false threats, but that even if your husband, and actually it could be a man still in this case who's asking a question, I'm not sure, but if your husband doesn't think it's a problem, which from the way you put it, it sounds like he's been denying that it's a problem, you can still say, even if it's not a problem for him, it is a problem for you, and it is a problem in the relationship, and that you're not willing to continue the relationship unless he gets treatment. But you have to be willing to, first of all, say that in a calm way and not in the heat of the argument or when he's drunk. You have to, do it at a time when he's sober, and when you can do it in a calm way that is kind of starting over, in the sense of not calling wolf again. And then you have to be willing to follow through, which is to say, if he doesn't get treatment, you have to be serious about leaving. because otherwise it's just another empty threat, and it's really the only leverage you have at this point, probably, if he's been unwilling to consider it otherwise. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think these are really painful dynamics when your partner has an addiction, because it does feel like your love should be enough. If they loved me enough, they could overcome this addiction. And that's a really painful place to be as a partner. If you've been together for 15 years, I suspect that you love this person, unless there are other things keeping you there that I don't know about. And so that keeps us making these false promises, because we just want to believe that our love would be enough. And here's the scoop. It's not. Unfortunately, it's not. And that's the most painful part. I loved what Robert said about, coming forward in a really calm way and being clear. And I think this is the piece that has to remain true in all relationships, that we do ultimately have to have the ability to sort of stand for our own safety when the time comes. And that's really hard work, right? To really hold that connection of the we, and then that power of the I at the same time, and how to navigate that in a really graceful, connective way. Because I think on the one extreme, some people leave relationships too soon, and on the other extreme, some people don't leave when they should. And so finding that delicate balance is really tricky. But I wanted to pick up on, and maybe we could take the conversation, you guys would be willing to weigh in on this. I loved what you'd said, Robert, about safety. And I just, in this couples therapist group that I'm in, one of the therapists had said, the centerpiece of couples work and what we do as a couple is we have to make one another feel safe with each other. And that's ultimately, it seemed like, what you were advocating for, Robert, was, that there isn't this safety, and the addiction is creating a sense of not feeling safe. And I was just curious if there were other ways that safety comes up with this couple or in other couples, and how couples can even talk about safety and how they're not making each other feel safe or not safe.
Yeah, one of the other questions asked, I think it was the second person, said, how can I have a safe conversation about gender roles? So, obviously, yeah, of course, I agree. Safety is key. And I think, one of the ways that I talk with couples, I actually, I don't work with couples where there's a severe addiction, but I will work with people who are kind of on the borderline or at the mild end of the spectrum. And one of the things I say to them about alcohol, especially, but it applies to other substances as well, is that it throws a wrench in the works in a number of different ways. For one thing, it creates a level of unpredictability, because when people are drinking, they become unpredictable. They become unreasonable. You can't sort of talk with them and reason with them. And the other thing that's kind of an offshoot of both of those things is that it impairs the very thing that you need to be able to do anything, really. But, to be able to have a relationship, to be able to think, to be able to feel clearly, it impairs your brain. And, so that is, kind of the basis for how it interferes ultimately in a way that you kind of have to be able to take that interference off the table to be able to do anything else.
Sure. In some ways, it's a third party in the relationship. It's you can almost conceptualize it as another person. So this husband has a decision to make. Does he choose gambling and alcohol over, we could say, the natural high of this relationship? And that's something that certainly he needs to explore. And it sounds like at this point, he's not willing to divorce gambling and alcohol in service of the relationship. But again,
or able to.
Or able to. Yeah, exactly. But it sounds like, again, we're just with what we have here, I'm not certain if the person has had these kind of discussions with the husband, or it's beyond the point where a discussion can be had, and it's time to move on and transition out of the relationship. So that's something they'll have to think about and be the judge of, whether or not it's worth that final effort to try to get the husband into therapy.
Yeah. How often do you think that you're having couples come in? I'm sorry, I'm going to put us all on the spot here. I think the thing that I've been the most amazed by, I drink, but I have been amazed by how many couples that I socialize with I would consider to have drinking problems, and that it's actually a part of the mommy culture to go have cocktails in the middle of the day. And this came up in a couple sessions of mine in the last couple months of new moms that I see that are like, yeah, there are a lot of new moms that go have cocktails in the middle of the day with their babies, right? So there is something, I'm curious if you think that a lot more of your couples are not reporting how much they're drinking when they're coming in to see you, or they don't see it as a problem, or it's just become so much a part of how couples with kids or couples under a lot of stress are coping with the stress of their day-to-day lives. Because I've been amazed as somebody who I think has a healthy relationship to drinking. I've been amazed at how much drinking is happening, that I'm like, wow, a lot more drinking is happening by a lot of couples that I didn't know it was happening as much.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a part of a lot of the couples work I do. I mean, just that opening up that exploration of what are the pros and cons, what are the functions of alcohol or any substance. Pot's another one that I've had several couples where one partner smokes marijuana, the other one doesn't. But just again, having that open dialogue of what, and also encouraging in that example, say for example, one person smokes pot or drinks and the other one doesn't, rather than the one partner approaching it from a space of judgment, having them practice having a non-judgmental, curiosity-oriented discussion of how the substance is positive and negative in the other person's life, and exploring that. I guess that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, Tracy, it's a common theme in the couples work I do. I think maybe with the certain demographic we work with, a lot of professionals, right? It's part of kind of work culture, happy hours, and that bleeds over to home life, and it can be a real challenge, for sure.
Yeah, I would say for in my experience, it's maybe, I don't know, somewhere between 15 and 30% of the couples I see, it's a significant enough issue, at least as far as what people report. And I actually have people on their intake sheets. I have each partner separately. I ask them how many drinks a week they have. And I generally trust them. I mean, people, I've had quite a few people report that they have a drink every day or more than a drink every day. So and I always ask them if it's a problem for each other, if drinking or substances are problematic for each other. But it's interesting what you said about the mommy culture, because I read an article about that on medium.com that was actually a really good article, but I haven't come across it that much in my practice.
It could be the gender difference between us. Yeah.
That's interesting though. I'll have my ears out now for that.
Well, I just wanted to say that I'm going to get a little bit on a political soapbox. Again, like Andrew, I do tend to not want to join in any kind of shaming about any substance use. I believe that we're using substances for a whole bunch of reasons. And what therapy's job is to explore those reasons so that you can be liberated to be making choices that work for you and not just feel hemmed into a habituated pattern, right? And if the substance use is habituated because you don't have a way to free yourself, then great, let's do that. And then if you discover that, and I'm going to still use substances, but I'm going to do it more mindfully, then great, let's do that too, right? I think what's troublesome for me is I do see a lot of couples that are using alcohol now because their lives aren't working for them. And their lives aren't working for them because the way we've structured the amount that people are having to work these days and raise kids, and to no fault of their own, but they fundamentally need a way to disconnect, and they are quite literally disconnecting using substances. And I just want to align with that real legit need to disconnect and unplug. And I think there's going to also have to be a cultural and social answer to what we're demanding of young couples and parents, and dual working households pretty soon, because I think it's really hard on couples. I really do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that part therapy can't fix. What we can do is we can help you downsize your life a little bit so that maybe you don't have to work as hard. But we're all in the thick of it together. It's the demands are high. And so I don't want you to feel like a failure. Because the demands on you are so high. They're really high. It's hard for everyone. So I just want to encourage you and know that. Yeah. This was really fun.
Just a final note on that third question there is just to reiterate or iterate to that person that there's help and support out there. You're not alone in having a spouse that struggling with substance use or gambling, and there's groups out there to connect with, and you're not alone.
Yeah, Al-Anon is a really good resource.
Mm-hmm.
If you're willing to check out, a little bit of the 12-step stuff, but it's really much more than 12-step. It's about taking care of yourself, not overextending yourself, kind of stuff. Figuring out what's important for you.
Yeah, I love Al-Anon, actually. I think sometimes I like it better than AA. I think what they're doing is pretty cool. Yeah. Cool. I had so much fun. This is definitely the high point of my day, but I guess that's not saying much considering I was sick in bed all day. I'm glad I was able to rise to the occasion.
Take care of you now. I think you've been recovered a little bit here.
Yeah. So, guys, let's do this again in 8 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
See you guys soon.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and bye, guys.
Thanks for all the questions.
Yeah.
Yes.